It is 2:53, and we're going to go ahead and get started with our employee retention update, compensation study, and benefits survey. And I think we have Tad Phillips here.
Yes, sir.
Ms.
Good
Phillips,
afternoon.
drive away.
All right. Well, thanks for letting me spend a few minutes with y'all. This should be a fairly succinct presentation. I've got 24 slides. Feel free to stop me at any time during the presentation. But the focus of this presentation is really to give you all an update. I think it's a positive story, an update on what we're doing around our employees, around our employee engagement, particularly our comp study, benefit study, but also a few other things mixed in here. Before I do that, though, and so it'll focus on these four areas: tending to culture, employee compensation, employee benefits, and flexibility. But before we do that, I want to kind of lay some background, state of the world, some of the things you heard from Dave this morning about the state of the economy. I'm going to slightly duplicate, but maybe just add some additional accents too. So as we well know, the Great Resignation isn't quite over yet. We continue to see a lot of turnover, movement, and vacancies in jobs across the U.S. and locally as well. Some interesting data on this slide. A number of resignations have exceeded pre-pandemic high. More than 4 million Americans left their jobs each of the past 18 months. And this is impacting, and so it hasn't really slowed down. It's steadied a little bit, but we continue to see a lot of churn and a lot of vacancies. U.S. net jobs were added. Some of the most recent reporting in January, 517,000 new jobs. We see increases in 128,000 new jobs in January in leisure and hospitality, 105,000 jobs in education and healthcare, 82,000 new jobs in professional and business services. And one stat that Dave mentioned this morning that I found a similar stat, which is for every vacancy we have, or for every person looking for work, we typically have about 2 vacancies, and that's across different industries, both white collar and our trades positions. But we're particularly struggling with trade positions. So this is a status check on where we're at with our positions and vacancies in our organization. So on the whole, where we're at as of a few days ago is we have 94 vacancies, 895 filled positions. That's 11% vacancy rate. At the same time last year when this presentation was given, we were at 11% at that time too. We've had some ebbs and flows in different areas, but what's been really consistent is particularly for our lower wage jobs, our trade and entry-level positions, particularly public services, parks and rec, our parks maintenance worker, our equipment operators, these jobs that start typically in the $16 to $19 an hour range, we continue to struggle to find interested talent for those jobs. And so that's the primary story here. I do want to share, though, that I've only been here to 6 weeks myself, but I've been trying to learn and understand what we've been doing. We've been very proactive to try and address this. We've been doing hiring incentives. We have, $1,000 hiring incentive in place for all of those same jobs. And so we're working aggressively to try and attack it. But when the folks aren't there, the folks aren't there. So that's a big challenge that we're working to overcome. This shows similar story. I guess it's kind of the bad news story of our turnover rate being at 18.2% right now. However, to put that in context, so it shows us our turnover rate going up over time, which is very unfortunate. But at the same time, if you look at, I've got data on 9 nearby cities as of right now. That average in those 9 nearby cities is 20%. Just a few anecdotes. Carrollton's at 23%, Plano's at 19%, Grand Prairie's at 30%, and so on. And so we're not unique as a municipal employer or an employer in general that we're seeing higher turnover, and it aligns with the national data as well. Just a couple other broad informational items I wanted to share with you, just so you know, as far as performance of our health fund. What we saw, it was somewhat unique here in Lewisville over the pre-pandemic and early pandemic years. We actually saw a negative trend on our health expenses, which is very rare. You almost always see close to double-digit trend year after year. So we did see an increase, that green line go up over this last year. That was an increase of 12%. However, over a 5-year average, we've outperformed national trend. And so I see that as just a course correction for negative trend over the prior years. Overall, we're in a pretty decent spot with our health plan. And then this is just a couple things on employee demographics. So the chart on the left, I don't know how well y'all can see that, but the chart on the left is just to show as an FYI what our demographic breakdowns are for the population in Lewisville as well as for the employee base in Lewisville. And so you see On the left-hand side, we see our citizen or our resident population, 37% white, 29% Hispanic, 14% Black, 14% Asian. And then you see a little bit different distribution of our employee base. And so this is just additional information for us. There's no specific targets here, but it's something we just want to have an awareness of. What you see on the right is demographic trends, something we're tracking. Part of Council's JEDI initiative is on the website. We are out there tracking what our promotions and hires look like from a demographic perspective. And we see positive trends in underrepresented groups over the last 12 months. So that's a modestly positive trend, so that's a good story. So getting to the heart of the presentation, I was impressed, as a new person walking in, I was impressed to see that one of the City Council's priorities was employee recruitment, development, and retention. Obviously, it aligns with the Lewisville Way, but I think it's a huge priority for the success of this organization, quite frankly, any organization. If staff's going to be effective at achieving Council's goals, we have to be effective at recruiting, retaining, and developing employees. So really excited that you all chose this as a priority. What this slide shows is that listed priority that you all created last spring, broken out into its distinct components. And so what you all said that was a priority was prioritizing recruitment of the best available candidates for all vacancies, offering fair and competitive compensation and benefits, continually educating employees on available benefits and how to access them, provide ample training opportunity throughout the organization, recognize and reward excellence, and create a positive work environment for staff in accordance with the Lewisville Way. And the visual you're supposed to see on the right is how elements of what you're going to see in this presentation coming up tie back to your priority. This presentation is not so much focused on training. That is a key area for us, but that's not going to be a focus of this presentation. So the first one is tending to culture. And so the organization engaged in an employee survey in the summer of 2022. We had about a 58% response rate from our employees, and out of that survey, we identified 5 key areas that we got feedback from our employees that we could continue to get better at. One is compensation, benefits, promotional opportunities, the leanness of our organization, and flexible work schedules. And actually, starting from the right, great work's already occurred this year as far as creating a flexible work administrative directive that allows some flexibility in departments for folks to create different work schedules, for there to be telecommuting up to 2 days a week in jobs where it makes sense. The lean organization is one thing you all have taken into consideration in your past discussions around the compensation study. So that's a piece that's built into the analysis there, and we'll talk more about the compensation study in a moment. And really the first and the third, compensation and promotional opportunities, tie to that compensation study as well. And then in a moment I'll talk about the further look that we did on benefits, recognizing that that was a challenge. So, you know, when you talk about building culture and building positive trust with your workforce, one thing is you need to ask them questions. The other thing is you need to do something with it. And so what's great is we're asking the questions and we're building plans to do something with it in all these areas. So that second one was benefits. Out of that initial survey, the organization identified that we needed to dig deeper and understand what challenges and frustrations were employees seeing around our benefits program. And so out of that, we did the deeper dive, and I would say broadly what we learned in that second survey was kind of a lukewarm overall response to our benefits program. You know, it seems adequate, it's working okay, but as we kind of dug a layer deeper, what we heard from our employees were challenges around medical out-of-pocket expenses and premiums, that those tended to feel or be high, that we have narrow network access with all of our plans, or with 2 of the 3 of our plans, excuse me, and so that creates some challenges for folks. We have 3 plans. One of them is what we call our catastrophic plan. We buy a supplemental gap insurance to help with that. It's very involved, complex, confusing, difficult for folks to grasp, and that came through in the survey. And then there's a desire for retiree health coverage. Dental maximums were an issue. But more broadly, education, understanding some of the complexities. Like, I'll tell you, again, as a new person coming in, I'm impressed with the creativity and thoughtfulness that have gone into building the benefits program over the years here at the City of Lewisville, but I think the net result in some cases is folks just don't understand what their options are or how it works. So what happens when people don't understand? They think it's bad. So I think our overall themes that we've identified out of this survey is we need to simplify our plan, simplify our offerings, make them understandable, remove barriers, and then help educate folks about those. And that ties back to the council's goals as well. I'll talk about that in some more depth in a later slide. So the last thing I want to mention on tending to culture, we've done surveys this year on overall, we've done a survey on benefits. I think looking ahead, want to build some consistent, and we're talking relatively small dollars here, but as we look ahead to budget for next year, want to build a little bit of dollars in there for consistent surveying and work within, not only on global things that we do as an organization, but also digging in with work groups on how we can build work plans within work groups to respond and create good energy around employee engagement. And I think there's already some of that there, but I think we have opportunities to keep going. So that was the first item. The second item is compensation. I think y'all have spent some time digging into this. I went back and watched y'all's, the time that you spent with our compensation consultant, Matt, back on November 7th. But just to give you, just kind of set the stage of where we're at and where we're going, what we've already done on this current fiscal year is we did, in October, we did market changes, and so we moved like our public safety steps approximately 2% depending on the position. We moved all of our other pay ranges and individuals by 2%, and then all of our employees get steps on their anniversary date or 4% merit on their anniversary date depending on their position. So I think the organization tried to be fairly aggressive at doing both those things to kick off the year and then set aside dollars for this compensation study that's underway right now. So our intention is to, this is not an in-depth update on the compensation study. Our intention is to come to you with the consultant on your April 3rd meeting and do a workshop update on where we're at with that study as we come close to finalizing that. But just to remind you, the goals of that study are we want to create market competitive structures. We want to lead market. What you all said collectively on November 7th in your prior meeting was you want to lead market to some extent, and so we've modeled some scenarios that get at what council said that day. And then once we build those structures, obviously we want to get employees into those structures and progress them through those structures in a reasonable and thoughtful way that moves them where they need to be. Additional things we're trying to do out of that study is create better career pathing, which ties back to that, the survey topic of lack of promotional opportunities. And then updating salary administration. And so you may see some other items come from us as far as more minor policy items as an outcome from the compensation study to update things like our practices around what we pay new hires, promotions, things of that nature. Sticking with compensation studies, so our goal one was creating market competitive structures. What our consultant has done to date, they've already gone through and they've surveyed over 200 job titles against our 17 comparator organizations. They've also included private sector data in that. I was just emailing with the consultant just a little while ago while sitting over here. We're QCing some of that data, but in general it looks good. He's showing that we find, as we would expect, markets are moving quickly, and so we're behind in different positions. And so we're modeling updated versions of our pay structures based off of that. And he's building pay structures that model at 100% of market, at 103% of market, and 105% of market. And so we're in the process of going through all the detail of that right now and to have that ready with a strong recommendation back to council on April 3rd. But that's tied to that concept of leading market that you all had previously discussed. Just sticking with the compensation study just for a couple moments longer, I think it's important to know, think about it from an employee's perspective. Why does compensation matter? Yes, you want your structures competitive, but you also want to, the red line is progress through your pay structure over time. And so year-to-year increases are part of that story. And then also you need to have opportunities for either promotion or additional roles over a career. You know, gone are the days when you just go in a particular job and you sit there for 10 years. Folks don't do that anymore. That's part of, it's an employee's market and they can go and do other things. So if we create logical progressions or lattices and other opportunities as shown on this slide, that creates a greater likelihood that they will stick around and stick with the organization for at least some period of time. So one thing we're doing, we're actually meeting with directors next week, and we're showing them some of the initial titling changes out of the draft of the compensation study and also soliciting their input on additional kind of step titles for them to create within their work groups to that end. So I'll take HR for an example. We have an HR analyst. We don't have a senior HR analyst. So if I'm a good HR analyst and I do that well, what's my path? My only opportunity today is to become a supervisor, you become a manager at some point in time. Some folks don't want to be a manager. So do we create those other paths for folks? So that's a big piece of this project that we're working on right now. And creating these paths would be a non-promotional path for folks, separate from the regular promotional process. So timeline on the comp study, we right now, just giving you a brief update, we're meeting with directors next week to talk about titling. We're going to bring a workshop to you all on April 3rd, and then our intention is to start implementation soon thereafter in April and communicate out to our employees in April. So elements of the project will drag on after that, but the main piece of delivering updates to compensation to employees and updating our pay structures will happen very quickly in the next couple months. So that's a compensation study. I'll pause real quick. I'm going to move on to item 3 of my 4, which is benefits. So this, a few slides ago mentioned that we did a secondary survey on benefits, and I mentioned some of the themes that came out of that. So just want to know, we have a project going on right now working with our benefits consultant, who's a great benefits consultant, works with a number of employers across the state. And what we're doing is coming up with some really great ideas on how we can simplify the plans, remove barriers. So some of this just shows a list of some of the things we're considering. We're not nailing any of these down at this point, but right now we're planning, looking ahead for our next plan year. Our plan year starts on October 1, so we're looking at changes about 6 months out. But some of the things that we're talking about are changes to medical deductibles, out-of-pocket maximums, kind of redesigning some of the structures potentially, where right now we call one of our plans a catastrophic plan with this gap insurance, and looking at some fundamental redesigns there that make sense for employees. And some of these changes will be at a cost. However, the way we're doing our analysis is we're looking very closely at what's our overall current budget around benefits, and we believe there's some wiggle within that budget, so we're trying to build plans that enhance the benefit but do it within the budget that we already have allotted to us. But some of the other things we're checking to see, we do a tobacco surcharge right now, and one of the questions we're asking ourselves is, does that have the intended consequences that we want it to have, or is it just some more administrative nightmare for the folks that have to go through it, as just one example. And so I could bore you all day talking about benefits. If you all want to hang out and talk about benefits later tonight, just let me know. We can have a good old time. But yeah, changes would be for next.
Do we do that at the cigar bar?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. This is just, and I don't show this to necessarily drag you into the detail, but just to show you like when some of the data points we're using when we're looking at this benefit stuff is, and this comes from our consultant, is what do we see in the private sector? What do we see in the public sector? What are we doing as far as our plan design, our deductibles, our out-of-pocket maximums, our premiums, et cetera? That's all things that we're looking at very closely and giving weight when we look at options to bring for next year. And like I said, when we bring changes here, the last piece of that's going to be a strong educational campaign for our employees. So they'll see real changes to what things look like, but we'll be really focused on making sure they understand the changes. Because like I said it earlier, but you can give people an amazing product, and if they don't believe it's an amazing product, it's a waste of everybody's time. So the last thing I want to hit on with you all today is talking about flexibility and work-life balance. What this visual is meant to show is just that, you know, we can get caught up in one or two elements of what is flexibility in work? What are employees looking for today? You hear all kinds of things if you read articles. But I think what's pretty cool is, excuse me, I think we as an organization are trying to hit on all of these items. So we've already done things around telework. We're looking at our wages. We're looking at our traditional benefits. We've already addressed some other non-traditional benefits. But I think one thing that we're starting to look at now, and we may come back at a later date for you all, is just looking at our leave. I think for employees, time off and leave is a thing that's important to them. So we're just reviewing our competitiveness around things like vacation accruals, holidays, et cetera, and making sure that we're market competitive for those things, because you'd be surprised, after pay, that's one of the first things that people are looking at these days when they're looking at jobs, and we have a shortage of labor. So just a heads up on that, more to come in that arena. So in summary, on the 4 focus areas, tending to culture, we've already this year been surveying. We've done multiple surveys. We have plans to create kind of a consistent methodology around that in the future. On compensation, we're near completion of the comp study. We'll give you a full update on April 3rd. On benefits, we're doing that deep dive on benefits changes that would take effect on this next plan year. And then finally, on flexible work, we're starting to look at some of these, some of the data around other things that we could do there. More to come on that later. Just a reminder, this is y'all's priority. Appreciate it being one of the council's priorities, and we're happy to be doing the work to try and support our workforce and maybe over time get at turnover, get at vacancy. Those are all things we're working hard to get better at. So I'd be happy to answer any questions y'all may have.
So I have a quick question. I'm curious about the positions that we have open. Are we just seeing no resumes coming in or no qualified applicants coming in?
It's really case by case per position, and we've got a room full of hiring managers over on the other side of the room, so any of them are welcome to speak up. But I think, particularly at those lower level, let me go back to the slide just to give a visual with what we're talking about here. So particularly on those lower level positions, what we're seeing, like today, for example, there are 11 parks maintenance worker openings. I think, Stacy, Marcus, would you say with our parks maintenance worker openings, we're not seeing very many candidates, not very many strong candidates, right?
Right, and those are open until filled positions, so we just, as they trickle in, we immediately get them, trying to contact people as soon as possible. It's like one or two every couple of weeks,
Wow.
even with the incentive.
Is there filtering criteria that we're using to put, and I bring this up in the context of, there's a lot of organizations, and there's a push towards things like low-level, like a marijuana conviction or something like that, that tends to filter people out of the workforce, but are we seeing that we're filtering people out?
No, we do have some standards around those things, but what we're not doing on the front end is filtering those out ahead of time. We're doing the background check once they've identified a good candidate, and only rarely is that actually knocking somebody out.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Council, any other questions, comments?
Yeah. I know Shantae and Claire are tired of hearing this come out of my mouth. Retirement insurance. Right now, as it stands, they get what? $500 stipend only if they stay on the city's plan, which is well over $1,000 a person. So it's almost like a hostage situation. I want to see that follow the person. If they retire, I mean, how long would that be before they got on Social Security? I mean, if you're going to do
It
the
could be a long time.
$500,
Yeah.
then give them the $500 as a benefit and let them, if they have competitive insurance someplace else, let them get it. We're not in the insurance market. And then the other thing that really concerned me is 66% approval rate. Anywhere you look at that, that's a failing grade.
Yeah, hence my description of lukewarm. I'm with
Yeah.
you. I'm with you. We're going to get at that. And to your first point, I hear you loud and clear. We've actually asked our actuary to do some work on that, because that's the thing that always we struggle with retiree health is how many millions of dollars, et cetera. So the actuary is looking at it now, so we can get some good data and report that back to you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, good work is one thing. I think as a benefit, the retirees should get that. If they've been here a certain
Yeah.
amount of years.
Yeah.
Let them, if they want to get it and stay within the Lewisville network, that should be a choice of theirs. But that $500 some odd stipend should be a benefit to them. We shouldn't have to hold their feet to the fire. Like, you can have this, but your premiums are going to cost you 3 times as much, and that'll go towards that.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions?
Can I, oh, I'm so sorry, go ahead. No, I was just gonna give kudos, but.
Okay. Kudos.
Kudos. Oh, welcome aboard, by the way.
So I am curious,
Good
so
job.
when we get back employee engagement surveys, it's something I see all the time in private sector,
Yeah.
engagement surveys, and then we go through and we look at the gaps and we make, positive plans to try to close those gaps before the next survey comes out.
Yeah.
And even 58% response rate still seems low. That's telling in of itself, right?
Yeah.
So, and we can go offline and talk about this in more detail, but
Yeah.
I'm assuming there's plans to say, these are the 6 areas where we have deficits, and then put it back to the employees, help me close these deficits. We don't come up with plans, you tell me what you want to see, and then we reinforce that.
That's the background that I come from in doing annual engagement surveys and having that on the back end. It's small groups getting together and identifying what are we doing in our group, because there's, like, all the things I'm talking about, these are global initiatives, and which is huge, but it's what really matters to an employee is what's happening locally with my team. And so I think, to your point, that's where I'd like to go with that. Yes, sir.
So point of clarification, we did that same process
Oh,
after
yeah,
our
sorry.
surveys were sent out. So we talked about the global results, and then each department had opportunity to talk about their departmental results, and then partner within their department to talk about how they should close those gaps.
Did we do that prior year as well? I'm curious about how those gaps
I
closed.
think we took a 2-year hiatus on our employee surveys due to COVID.
Okay, awesome.
But that is our past practice in this organization.
Awesome. Next council meeting, I'm sorry, next retreat, we should be able to see where we were in individual measurements and then how we close those gaps. how we're
The
trending.
next
The next
survey,
retreat, yeah. Or
the next survey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are these annual surveys?
Well,
Well, that's-
yes, in the past, they were done annually, but you have to also understand, you have to have time to actually impact change.
No, I
So-
understand.
So if we're doing it too frequently, we're not gonna necessarily have enough
No,
time. But,
Annual is right.
but
Yeah.
if I recall correctly, Claire did send out the information as it relates to the global survey results. We can send that out again, and we can also dive deeper into what the departments are gonna do to address their concerns if you wish.
Yeah, if you got it handy, great, don't do anything special for this
Okay.
request. I'm just interested in a year from now, seeing what the results are of the efforts that we put to close those gaps. That's really what I'm
Most
trying to get to.
Most definitely.
And just one thing I'd add to that is I think part of our analysis will be looking at our current vendor and seeing if that's the one we're going to stick with. So if, for example, we switch vendors, then our year-to-year data would not look the same. It's different surveys, et cetera, but.
But I would like to go back to what you said, only 58% participating in the surveys. I think. How am I gonna say this a little bit? Only 58% participated in, but I think they're sitting back. They're gonna see if anything's gonna come of that participation. Because historically in the past, from the feedback I've received, it's like, why take the survey? Because nothing comes at it. It's like a placating thing. So there's a lot of skepticism, and so now it's a new day.
Yeah.
Well, I think you have to leaven that slightly with the other data point on that slide, which says that across the country, the
Well, that's
average is
true.
58%. So while, yes, I think we strive for perfection, I don't necessarily see that as negative. I see people I'm just as bad about it as anybody else. Yeah. Oh, survey, I'll get to it. And then we don't. And it has nothing to do with anything. It's just survey overload. So I'm excited to see 75% when it comes. I know that's where we're headed, but I'm not going to beat staff up for 58%.
You're gonna get it.
And I'm going to be careful about attributing
Get it.
negativity to past performance to a number that's got an industry average.
I'm going to give kudos now. I just want to say thanks to Tad. This is his first time really presenting, isn't it?
Yeah.
At Retreat, so we are, he's really, he came into this.
You were supposed to bring the gelato.
He came
Oh,
into
nobody,
this,
sorry.
yeah. He came into this midstream, and he's really taken the bull by the horns and dug in, and I've just been very happy with kind of the direction we're going, so I appreciate it, Tad.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I think we're done with that section of retreat.